Chapter 1. The Drifting Cloud and the First Gods. Close your eyes and let your breath become as steady as the tide. Imagine a time before the islands were shaped, before the mountains touched the clouds, and before the sun cast its golden reflection upon the sea. In the very beginning, the universe was a chaotic, swirling mass, like an egg without a shell, or a dark cloud drifting in a fathomless void. There was no light, no dark, no earth, and no sky, only a silent, heavy mist that held the seeds of all things. Slowly, the lighter parts of this mist began to rise, floating upward to form the high plane of heaven, Takamanohara. It was a realm of pure spirit, as clear and still as a mountain lake. From this celestial stillness, the first three deities emerged, hidden and solitary. They were the deities who created the universe, beings of pure existence who appeared and then vanished back into the primordial silence. But the heavier parts of this mist did not rise. They remained below, drifting like oil upon the water, formless and dark. To bring order to this swirling deep, two young deities were called forth: Izanagi, the male who invites, and Izanami, the female who invites. They stood together upon the Ame no Ukihashi, the floating bridge of heaven, a shimmering arch of light that hung suspended between the celestial heights and the dark, watery chaos below. Izanagi held a spear decorated with jewels, a gift from the elder gods. He reached down from the bridge and dipped the tip of the spear into the drifting brine. Slowly, rhythmically, he began to stir the chaos. Imagine the sound of the spear moving through the water, a soft, swirling ripple in the absolute silence of the beginning. When he lifted the spear, a single drop of salty water trickled down the blade and fell back into the deep. As that drop touched the surface, it did not vanish. It hardened, forming the island of Onogoro, the self-formed island. The two deities descended from the clouds to walk upon this new earth. They built a great palace with a central pillar that reached toward the heavens. As they walked around this pillar, they acknowledged one another, and through their union they began to give birth to the world. They did not just create the land, they gave birth to the very spirit of the earth. They birthed the islands of Japan, the great 8 islands, emerging like emeralds from the blue silk of the sea. But their work was not finished. They gave birth to the kami, the spirits of the wind, the trees, the mountains, and the rivers. Imagine the world waking up for the very first time. Feel the first breeze as the god of the wind is born, rustling through the tall grass. Hear the first trickle of a stream as the water spirits take their places in the valleys. Every stone, every leaf, and every wave was infused with a living soul, a hidden spark of the divine. However, creation is often tied to sacrifice. When Izanami gave birth to the god of fire, the searing heat was too much for her to bear. Her spirit faded, and she descended into Yomi no Kuni, the land of the dead, a realm of shadows and eternal twilight. Izanagi, consumed by a grief that shook the mountains, could not let her go. He traveled to the dark gates of the underworld, his footsteps echoing in the cold silence of the deep earth. He found her in the shadows and begged her to return to the world of light. Izanami whispered from the darkness, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves. She promised to ask the lords of the underworld for permission to leave, but she warned Izanagi, "You must not look upon me until the time is right." But Izanagi's heart was restless. In the darkness, he lit the single tooth of his comb to act as a torch. The flickering flame revealed a terrible truth. Izanami was no longer the beautiful goddess of creation, but a being of decay and shadow. Terrified, Izanagi fled back toward the world of light, pursued by the spirits of the underworld. He reached the entrance of Yomi and rolled a massive boulder across the opening, forever separating the land of the living from the land of the dead. From behind the stone, Izanami cried out in anger, promising to take 1,000 lives every day. Izanagi replied that he would cause 1,500 to be born. And so the cycle of life and death, of breath and stillness, was established in the world. Exhausted and stained by the darkness of the underworld, Izanagi traveled to a clear river to wash away the shadows. This was the first act of Mythology, the ritual of purification. As he stepped into the cool running water, let the sound of the stream wash over you as well. Feel the tension leaving your limbs as the water flows past. As Izanagi washed his left eye, the goddess of the sun, Amaterasu, emerged, brilliant, warm, and radiant. As he washed his right eye, the god of the moon, Tsukuyomi, emerged, silver, silent, and calm. And as he washed his nose, the storm god Susanoo emerged, wild, powerful, and restless. The world was now complete with light and shadow, storm and stillness. The sun rose for the first time over the islands, and the moon waited in the wings of the evening. You are safe now, drifting in the wake of that first purification. The world is ancient, the spirits are watchful, and the water is always moving, carrying away the worries of the day. Sleep now, beneath the floating bridge of heaven, as the islands cradle you in the deep blue silence of the sea. As the sun begins its slow descent in your mind, imagine the high plain of heaven, Takama no Hara. It is a place of infinite light, where the soil is made of celestial dust and the rivers flow with a clarity that no mortal eye has ever truly seen. In the center of this realm stands the great sun goddess, Amaterasu. She is the weaver of the universe, sitting in her sacred weaving hall, her fingers moving rhythmically across the loom. With every pass of the shuttle, she weaves the light of the day, the warmth of the seasons, and the very life force that allows the rice to grow in the paddies of the world below. Her presence is a constant, gentle hum of existence, a golden radiation that ensures the harmony of all things. But even in the heavens, harmony can be fragile. Amaterasu had a brother, Susanoo, the god of storms and the sea. While Amaterasu was the steady light of the morning, Susanoo was the wild, unpredictable wind. He was restless, a deity of salt spray and thunder, whose heart was often heavy with a turbulent, dark energy. One day, in a fit of wild defiance and celestial rage, Susanoo descended upon his sister's peaceful domain. He destroyed the ridges of her sacred rice fields. He filled the cooling irrigation canals with earth. And finally, in an act of terrible desecration, he threw a flayed heavenly piebald horse through the roof of her weaving hall. The shock was too much for the goddess of light. The world, once so bright and ordered, suddenly felt violent and strange. Wounded by her brother's cruelty and overwhelmed by the darkness of the act, Amaterasu did something that changed the cosmos forever. She stopped her weaving. She stood up from her loom, walked to the furthest reaches of the heavens, and entered the Ame no Iwato, the heavenly rock cave. With a heavy heart, she pulled the massive stone door shut behind her, sealing herself in the cold, silent dark. The moment the stone door clicked shut, the universe vanished into an absolute, terrifying shadow. Imagine the sudden silence of a world without light. In the high plain of heaven and on the central land of reed plains, the earth below, the sun vanished. The stars did not twinkle. They were swallowed by a thick, suffocating gloom. The birds stopped singing mid-note. The flowers curled their petals, thinking the end of time had arrived. The kami, the thousands of spirits that inhabit the trees, the rivers, and the stones, began to wail in the darkness. Without the sun, the spirits of chaos and the demons of the night grew bold. Wickedness began to sprout like weeds in an untended garden. The world was freezing, and the heartbeat of the land was slowing to a crawl. The 8 million gods gathered in the dry bed of the heavenly river of quiet. They were desperate. They knew they could not force the sun goddess out. Her power was her own, and if she chose to remain in the cave, the world would eventually wither into dust. They sat in a vast circle, their faces illuminated only by the faint flickering glow of a few sacred fires. They consulted the wisest of them all, Omoikane, the god of thought. "We cannot use strength," he whispered, his voice steady in the dark. "We must use the power of the soul. We must use curiosity, joy, and the reflection of her own greatness." The gods began a strange and beautiful ritual. First, they gathered the long singing birds of the eternal night, the roosters, and set them near the cave entrance. They commanded the birds to crow over and over, mimicking the sound of a dawn that refused to come. Kokke kokko. The sound echoed against the cold stone of the cave, a rhythmic reminder of the morning. Next, they went to the celestial smiths and the carvers. They fashioned a magnificent mirror, the Yata no Kagami, polished until its surface was as smooth and deep as the soul of the universe. They crafted jewelry of curved green magatama beads, representing the seeds of life. They hung these treasures on the branches of a sacred sakaki tree, which they placed directly in front of the cave's heavy stone door. Then they turned to Ame Uzume, the goddess of mirth and dawn. She was not a goddess of quiet weaving, but of the wild, unbridled joy of existence. She overturned a wooden tub near the cave entrance and began to dance upon it. Thump, thump, thump. Her feet beat a rhythm against the wood, a heartbeat for the dying world. She shed her robes and danced with such wild, comedic abandon that the 8 million gods who had been weeping in the dark began to chuckle. The chuckle turned to a laugh, and the laugh turned to a roar of joy that shook the very foundations of the heavens. Inside the cave, wrapped in the cold silence of her grief, Amaterasu heard the noise. She was confused. She had thought that without her, the world would be a place of mourning and death. Why, she wondered, her voice small and muffled by the rock, why is there such laughter and song when the world is draped in shadow? She crept toward the door and pushed it open just a tiny crack. A thin sliver of light escaped, cutting through the darkness like a blade. She called out to Uzume, "How can you dance, and why do the gods laugh when I am gone?"
Uzume smiled, her eyes sparkling. "We laugh because we have found a deity even more radiant and magnificent than you." Curiosity, that ancient spark of life, flickered in Amaterasu's heart. She pushed the door a little further and peered out. At that exact moment, the other gods held up the great mirror. Amaterasu saw a reflection of a being so brilliant, so golden, and so powerful that she was transfixed. She did not realize at first that she was looking at herself. She leaned forward to see this new sun better, and as she did, the strong-handed god Taji Karao pulled the edge of the stone door wide open. Another god quickly stretched a sacred straw rope, a shimanawa, across the entrance of the cave, forbidding her to return to the darkness. As Amaterasu stepped fully out of the cave, the light flooded back into the universe. Imagine the warmth hitting the cold earth. The flowers opened in a sudden violent bloom of color. The birds erupted in song. The dark spirits of the night shriveled and fled back into the cracks of the earth. The rhythm of the loom began again, and the high plain of heaven was once more a realm of gold and blue. The world was saved not by war, but by a mirror, a dance, and a laugh. As you lie here in the stillness, imagine that golden light washing over you. It is not the harsh, burning sun of midday, but the soft, healing light of a new dawn. Feel it warming your shoulders, smoothing the tension from your forehead, and filling your chest with a quiet, steady glow. You are like the world after the cave, safe, renewed, and bathed in a light that can never truly be extinguished. The straw rope is tied, the darkness is kept at bay, and the goddess is back at her loom, weaving the fabric of your dreams. Let the rhythm of Uzume's dance become the rhythm of your breathing. In and out, light and shadow, peace and stillness. The cave is empty, the mirror is clear, and the islands are resting in the golden glow of the divine. Sleep now, for the sun has returned, and the night is only a gentle rest before a perfect morning.
Chapter 3. The Storm God and the Serpent of the 8 Hills. Imagine the world after the great sun goddess returned to her heavenly hall. The light was restored, but for Susanoo, the god of storms, there was no place left in the high plain of heaven. His wildness had caused too much grief, and his siblings could no longer look upon his face without remembering the shadow of the cave. And so the gods of heaven gathered and passed judgment. They clipped his beard, they plucked out his fingernails and toenails as a sign of his loss of power, and they cast him out. Imagine Susanoo falling through the clouds, leaving behind the golden weaving halls and the scent of celestial incense. He fell through the mists of the morning until his feet touched the cold, wet earth of the land of Izumo on the edge of the western sea. The land of Izumo was a place of deep green forests, jagged gray cliffs, and rivers that wound like silver ribbons through the valleys. But here the air felt different. It was heavy with a silent, creeping dread. As Susanoo wandered along the banks of the river he heard a sound that broke the stillness of the woods, a low, rhythmic sobbing. He followed the sound until he found an elderly couple, a mountain god named Ashinadzuchi and his wife Tenadzuchi. Between them sat a young maiden of exquisite beauty, her eyes red from weeping and her long black hair flowing like a dark river over her shoulders. This was Kushinada-hime, the princess of the wondrous rice paddy.
Susanoo, though a god of storms, felt a sudden cooling calm in his heart. He approached them, his voice no longer a roar of thunder, but a soft rustle of leaves. "Why do you weep in a land so beautiful?" he asked. The old man looked up, his face etched with the lines of 1,000 winters. "Noble stranger," he began, his voice trembling like a reed in the wind. "We once had 8 daughters, as bright and beautiful as the morning stars. But every year, for 7 years, a terrible shadow has crawled out from the depths of the earth. It is the Yamata no Orochi, the 8-headed serpent. Every year it comes to claim one of our children. Now only Kushinada-hime remains, and the time for the serpent's return is tonight." Susanoo sat upon a moss-covered stone and listened to the description of the beast. It was a creature of ancient, chaotic nightmares. Its body was so vast that it stretched across 8 valleys and 8 hills. Its 8 heads were crowned with red eyes that glowed like the berries of the winter cherry, and its belly was always smeared with the blood of its victims. Along its back grew moss and cedar trees, making it look like a moving mountain range of scales and rot. "If I slay this beast," Susanoo said, his eyes flashing with the remnants of his heavenly fire, "will you give me this maiden to be my wife?" The parents, seeing a spark of the divine in the stranger's gaze, agreed instantly. But Susanoo knew that even a god of storms could not defeat such a monster with strength alone. He needed the wisdom of the earth. He instructed the old couple to build a fence around their home, a strong, high fence with 8 gates. Behind each gate they were to place a sturdy wooden platform, and upon each platform they were to set a vat filled with refined sake, brewed 8 times over to make it strong enough to make even a mountain stumble. As the sun began to sink behind the jagged peaks of Izumo, the air turned cold and the birds fled the trees. Imagine the silence that fell over the valley. It was a heavy, expectant silence, broken only by the distant rhythmic thud, thud, thud of something immense moving through the forest. Then came the smell, the scent of damp earth, ancient scales, and the iron tang of blood. The Yamata no Orochi emerged from the mist. It was a terrifying sight. Each of its 8 heads hissed with a sound like steam escaping from a volcanic vent. Its eyes flickered in the dark, 16 red lanterns searching for the scent of the princess. But as the serpent reached the fence, its heads began to sway. The intoxicating aroma of the 8 times refined sake rose into the cool night air. The beast, driven by a primal, insatiable thirst, did not see the trap. Each of its 8 heads found a gate. Each head dipped into a vat of the potent brew. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Imagine the sound of the serpent drinking, the liquid flowing down 8 long, scaly throats. Slowly, the fire in its eyes began to dim. Its heads began to droop, one by one, resting heavily upon the wooden platforms. The great mountain-sized body of the beast went limp, and the sound of its labored breathing turned into a deep, thunderous snore that echoed through the hills of Izumo. Susanoo stepped out of the shadows. He drew his great sword, the 10-grip sword, and began to work. With the precision of a master craftsman and the strength of the tide, he cut away the 8 heads of the serpent. The blood of the beast flowed into the river He, turning the water a deep, dark crimson. As he reached the tail of the serpent, his blade struck something hard, something that rang with the clarity of a temple bell. He cut into the flesh and scales and found a magnificent sword hidden within the beast's body. This was the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, the grass-cutting sword, a blade of such purity and power that it shimmered with its own internal light. Susanoo stood alone in the moonlight, the threat gone, the valley finally at peace. He took the great sword and sent it to his sister, Amaterasu, as a gift of reconciliation, a bridge of steel to mend the bridge of clouds. He then built a palace in Izumo for himself and his new bride, Kushinada-hime, and as he built the walls, a beautiful cloud rose from the earth, and he sang a song that became the first poem of the land. In Izumo of the many rising clouds, I build a many-layered fence to house my wife. Oh, that many-layered fence. As you lie in the quiet of your room, imagine the many-layered fence around you. It is a fence of peace, a barrier against the storms of the world. The great serpent is gone, its chaotic energy returned to the earth. The river He flows clear and cool once more, the crimson fading into the silver of the moonlight. Feel the stillness of the Izumo forest. The moss is soft beneath your feet, and the scent of cedar and pine is thick in the air. Like the princess of the rice paddy, you are safe now, protected by the strength of a god who has found his purpose in the service of the land. The clouds are rising, soft and white, tucking the mountains into bed. Your breath is the wind in the trees, steady, rhythmic, and calm. The vats of sake are empty, the serpent sleeps forever in the soil, and the sword of light is held in the heavens to guide you home. Let your mind drift into the many-layered clouds, floating over the hills of Izumo, higher and higher, until there is nothing left but the stars and the deep, healing silence of the Japanese night. Sleep now, for the storm has passed, and the palace of dreams is waiting.
As the moon hangs high over the islands of Japan, let your spirit travel away from the high peaks and the roaring storms. Imagine a coastal path where the white sand meets the deep turquoise water of the Sea of Japan. The waves here do not crash. They slide across the shore with a sound like silk brushing against silk. Hush, wash, hush. This is the land of Inaba, a place of dunes, salt spray, and ancient secrets. In this land lived a young deity named Okuninushi, the great master of the land. But before he earned that title, he was known as Onamuji, the youngest and kindest of 80 brothers. His brothers were not like him. They were proud, arrogant, and filled with a restless, competitive fire. They all were traveling to the province of Inaba to woo the beautiful princess Yakami, each one convinced that his strength or his status would win her hand. They treated their youngest brother, Onamuji, as nothing more than a servant. They piled their heavy bags upon his shoulders until his back was bowed under the weight. As they marched ahead, laughing and boasting, Onamuji walked far behind, his footsteps heavy in the sand, his heart quiet and observant. As the brothers reached the Cape of Keita, they came upon a strange and pitiful sight. A small white hare lay upon the sand, its fur completely gone, its pink skin raw and bleeding. The hare was weeping, its small body shivering in the coastal wind. The 80 brothers, cruel and impatient, stopped to mock the creature. "If you want to heal your skin, little hare," they laughed, "you should bathe in the salt water of the sea, and then run to the top of that hill where the wind blows the hardest. The salt and the wind will surely fix you." The hare, desperate for any relief, followed their advice. But as the salt water touched its raw flesh, the pain became an agonizing fire, and as it ran into the biting wind, its skin began to crack and peel. The hare collapsed back on the sand, crying out in a voice that was thin and broken. A long time passed. The sun moved across the sky, and the shadows of the dunes lengthened. Finally, Onamuji arrived, trailing far behind his brothers. He saw the hare and immediately dropped the heavy bags. He did not laugh, he did not mock. He knelt in the sand, his shadow falling protectively over the small, suffering animal. "What has happened to you, little one?" Onamuji asked, his voice as soft as the evening mist. The hare looked up through its tears. "I lived on the island of Oki, and I wanted to cross the sea to this land, but I have no wings, and I cannot swim so far. So I tricked the sea crocodiles. I told them we should count which of our tribes was larger. I asked them to line up from the island to the cape so I could walk across their backs and count them. But as I reached the very last one, I bragged of my trickery. The last crocodile snapped its jaws and stripped the fur from my body." The hare told Onamuji of the cruel advice of the 80 brothers. Onamuji sighed, a sigh of deep, quiet sorrow for the unkindness of his kin. "Listen to me," Onamuji said. "The salt has only made you worse. You must go quickly to the mouth of the river, where the water is fresh and cool. Wash away the salt until your skin is clean. Then gather the pollen from the tall kaba no poen, the cattails that grow in the marshes. Spread the yellow pollen on the ground and roll your body in it. The pollen will act as a healing balm, and your fur will grow back as white as the clouds." The hare did as it was told. Imagine the feeling of the cool, fresh river water soothing the fire in the hare's skin. Imagine the soft, velvet touch of the golden pollen as it coated the raw flesh. Almost instantly, the pain vanished. The hare's fur began to sprout, thick and snowy white once more. The hare returned to Onamuji, but it was no longer just a common animal. It was a messenger of the spirits. "Because your heart is filled with musubi, the spirit of connection and kindness, it is you who shall win the Princess Yakami. Your brothers, for all their strength, shall return with empty hands." And so it was. When the brothers reached the palace, the princess turned them all away. She had heard of the kindness shown to the hare, and she chose Onamuji to be her husband. But the path of kindness is rarely easy. The 80 brothers, consumed by a jealousy that burned like charcoal, plotted to kill Onamuji. They took him to the foot of a mountain and told him they would drive a rare boar down the slopes. They commanded, "You must catch it, or we will put you to death." Instead of a boar, they heated a massive boulder in a great fire until it glowed red hot. They rolled it down the mountain. Onamuji, thinking it was the boar, reached out to catch it. The searing heat claimed his life instantly. But the spirits of the world do not let such kindness vanish. His mother, Kushigami, wept and ascended to the high plane of heaven to plead for his life. The elder deities sent down 2 goddesses of the hearth and the shell. They gathered the fragments of Onamuji's body, ground sacred shells into a fine powder, and mixed it with the milk of the earth.
They smeared this cream over him, and like the hare's fur, Onamuji's life returned, stronger and more vibrant than before. To protect him from his brother's further wrath, Onamuji was sent into the underworld, to the hidden palace of Susanoo, the storm god we met before. There, Onamuji faced many trials. He had to sleep in a room filled with venomous snakes, and then in a room filled with stinging centipedes and wasps. But Susanoo's daughter, the princess Suserihime, had fallen in love with him. She gave him a magical scarf that, when waved 3 times, turned the snakes to stone and the wasps to dust. Finally, Susanoo challenged him to find an arrow shot into a vast grassy plain. As Onamuji searched, Susanoo set the grass in fire. The flames rose higher than the trees, surrounding the young god. But a small mouse appeared at his feet. "The inside is hollow, hollow. The outside is narrow, narrow," the mouse squeaked. Onamuji stepped where the mouse indicated, falling into a hidden underground chamber just as the fire roared overhead. The mouse even brought him the arrow, its feathers uncharred. Seeing that Onamuji was protected by the very creatures of the earth, the hare, the mouse, the rustle of the grass, Susanoo finally accepted him. He gave him his daughter's hand, the great sword of life, and the bow and arrows of the earth. "Go," Susanoo roared, but with a note of pride. "Drive your brothers to the ends of the world. Become Okuninushi, the great master of the land. Build a palace where the pillars are rooted in the bedrock and the crossbeams reach the clouds." Okuninushi returned to the world of light. He did as the storm god commanded, but he did it with the same kindness he showed the hare. He did not kill his brothers, he simply moved them aside, establishing a land of peace, agriculture, and healing. He taught the people how to grow the best rice and how to use the herbs of the forest to cure sickness. He became the god of the invisible world, the one who ensures that all things are connected in harmony. As you lie in your bed, imagine the palace of Okuninushi. It is not a place of cold stone, but of warm, fragrant cedar and cypress. The pillars are steady, holding up the weight of the night sky so you don't have to. Feel the golden pollen of the cattails drifting through the air, settling over your thoughts like a soft, healing dust. The salt of the day's worries is being washed away by the fresh river of your breath, in and out, cool and clean. You are protected by the small things, the hare, the mouse, the rustle of the grass. The fire has passed over you, and you are still here, whole and renewed. Like the land of Izumo, your mind is becoming a place of deep, fertile peace. The sword of life is at rest, and the bow is unstrung. Let the sound of the sea of Inaba carry you away, further and further from the shore, until you are floating in a dream as white and pure as...
Imagine, if you can, the high plane of heaven once more. The great sun goddess Amaterasu looks down from her golden weaving hall, her eyes resting upon the central land of reed plains, the islands of Japan. The land has been tamed by the kindness of Okuninushi, but the time has come for the heavenly line to establish a bridge between the divine and the mortal. Amaterasu turns to her grandson, the young and radiant deity Ninigi no Mikoto. His name carries the sound of ripening grain and the rustle of silk. To him she grants a sacred mission, to descend from the clouds and rule over the islands, bringing the order of heaven to the soil of the earth. But a king does not descend empty-handed. Amaterasu bestows on Ninigi 3 treasures, the Sanshu no Jingji, objects of such immense spiritual weight that they define the soul of the land for all eternity. First, she gives him the Yata no Kagami, the 8-hand mirror. This is the very mirror that drew her out of the rock cave, the glass that held the reflection of the sun when the world was dark. Look upon this mirror, she tells him, her voice like the hum of a summer hive, and see it as if you are looking upon my own spirit. Let it be the mirror of your soul, reflecting only the truth, never distorted by ego or shadow. Second, she gives him the Yasakani no Magatama, the curved jewel of fertile life. It is shaped like a kama or a seed, a deep forest green that seems to hold the essence of every leaf and every heartbeat yet to be born. It represents the continuity of life, the gentle curve of the soul that moves from one generation to the next. Finally, she gives him the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, the grass-cutting sword. This is the blade Susanoo found in the tail of the 8-headed serpent. It is a weapon of protection, but more than that, it is a symbol of the power to clear away the tangles of chaos, to cut a path through the tall grass of uncertainty so that peace may take root. Armed with these 3 treasures, Ninigi prepares for his journey. But the path from heaven to earth is not a straight road. It is a descent through layers of thick, swirling mist and rolling thunderheads. As the heavenly procession reaches the floating bridge, a strange figure blocks their path. It is Sarutahiko, the god of the crossroads. He is a formidable sight, with a nose 7 hands long and eyes that glow like giant red plums. He stands at the junction of the 8 crossroads of heaven, his presence radiating a powerful, grounding energy. It is Utsume, the goddess of mirth who danced before the cave, who steps forward. With her laughter and her fearless spirit, she charms the giant god of the paths. Sarutahiko reveals that he has come not to block their way, but to serve as their guide. He knows the hidden trails through the clouds. He knows where the mountain peaks pierce the fog. With Sarutahiko leading the way, the procession descends. Imagine the sensation of falling slowly through a sea of clouds. The air grows thicker, smelling of damp earth and blooming wisteria. The golden light of heaven softens into the silver gray of a mountain morning. Finally, the soles of Ninigi's feet touch the solid rock of the earth. He has landed upon the peak of Mount Takichiho in the land of Hyuga. Around him the mist begins to part. He sees the rolling hills, the jagged coastlines, and the deep, silent forests of his new kingdom. But Ninigi finds that the earth is a place of fleeting beauty. Soon after his arrival, he meets a maiden of such startling loveliness that the very wind seems to hold its breath. This is Konohana Sakuya Hime, the princess of the flowering trees. She is the spirit of the cherry blossom, radiant, delicate, and pink as the dawn. Ninigi asks her father, the mountain god, for her hand in marriage. The mountain god agrees, but he sends 2 daughters instead of 1. He sends the Blossom Princess, but he also sends her elder sister, Iwanaga Hime, the princess of the eternal rocks. She is not fair of face. Her skin is gray and cragged like the stones of the high peaks.
Ninigi, young and dazzled by the beauty of the blossoms, sends the rock princess back to her father and marries only the goddess of the flowers. When the mountain god hears of this, he sighs with a heavy, ancient sorrow. He said, "I sent you both daughters for a reason. Had you taken the rock princess, the lives of your descendants would have been as eternal and unchanging as the mountains. But because you chose only the blossom princess, the lives of the emperors and all of humanity shall be like the cherry blossoms, beautiful and brilliant, yes, but fleeting, falling away with the first breath of the autumn wind. As you lie in your bed, feel the weight of this ancient choice. You are a part of that beautiful, fleeting world. Your life, like the blossom, is precious because it is delicate, but within you, you also carry the three treasures. Feel the mirror in your mind, a surface of absolute stillness. Let it reflect only the peace of this room, free from the distortions of the day's worries. Feel the jewel in your heart, a green glowing seed of rest. It is the part of you that knows how to grow even in the silence of the night. Feel the sword at your side, the power to cut away the tangled thoughts that keep you awake. With one gentle sweep, the grass of your mind is cleared, leaving only a smooth, open field. Imagine you are standing with Ninigi on the peak of Mount Takichiho. The clouds are drifting beneath your feet like a white ocean. The air is cool, and the scent of cherry blossoms is heavy and sweet. The rock princess is distant, a silhouette of a mountain against the stars, and the blossom princess is the soft warmth of your blankets. The procession is over. The gods have found their home upon the earth. The treasures are locked away in the secret chambers of the soul. Let the mist of Hyuga wrap around you, soft and thick, pulling you down into the deep, fertile valleys of sleep. The bridge to heaven is still there, shimmering in the starlight, but for now your place is here, on the quiet, resting earth. Sleep now, for the descent is finished, and the kingdom of dreams is yours to rule.
Chapter 6. The Tale of Hohodemi and the Sea God's Palace. As the mountain mists of Takachiho begin to dissolve in your mind, imagine the world shifting. The air grows heavy with the scent of salt and ancient depths. We move away from the flowering trees and the jagged rocks, following the rivers as they spill into the vast, eternal embrace of the ocean. In the generation after Ninigi, there were two brothers who divided the world between them. The elder brother was Hoderi, known as Sea Luck, for he possessed a magical hook that allowed him to catch every fish in the sea. The younger brother was Hohodemi, known as Mountain Luck, a master of the bow who could track any beast through the thickest forest. For many years the brothers were content in their separate realms. But one afternoon a restlessness took hold of them. Hohodemi, looking at the shimmering horizon, suggested they trade their tools, a trade of the mountain for the sea. Reluctantly, Hoderi handed over his jagged bone fishhook, and Hohodemi gave up his feathered arrows. But the sea is not as predictable as the forest. Hohodemi sat upon the rocks, casting the magical hook into the waves, but he did not understand the language of the tides. He did not feel the pull of the currents or the rhythm of the deep. Suddenly, a great fish struck, and with a violent snap of the line, the magical hook, the luck of the sea, was torn away and lost in the dark,
churning depths. When Hoderi learned of the loss, his rage was as cold as a winter gale. "A common hook will not do," he shouted, rejecting the hundreds of new hooks Hohodemi forged from his own sword. "I want the luck of the sea back, or our bond is severed forever." Overwhelmed by sorrow, Hohodemi walked along the shore, his footsteps heavy in the wet sand. He sat by the water's edge and wept, his tears falling into the brine. It was then that Shiotsuchi no Oji, the old god of the tides, appeared from the foam. His skin was like weathered driftwood, and his eyes held the wisdom of the moon. "Why does the grandson of the sun goddess weep by the salt sea?" the old god asked. When Hohodemi explained his plight, the tide god smiled. He wove a basket of bamboo so tightly that it could hold the breath of a man, and he placed Hohodemi inside. "Do not fear the sinking," the old god whispered. "Let the weight of the water carry you to where the lost things go." Imagine the sensation of sinking. It is not a frightening fall, but a slow, rhythmic descent through layers of blue light. The pressure of the world above fades away, replaced by a cool, silent weightlessness. The deeper you go, the quieter the world becomes. The turquoise of the surface turns to a deep royal indigo, and then to a velvety violet. Finally, the basket touches the soft white sand of the ocean floor. Hohodemi stepped out and found himself before the sight that defied the imagination. It was the palace of Watatsumi, the sea god. The walls were made of shimmering white coral, and the roof was tiled with the scales of silver fish. Around the palace grew forests of kelp that swayed in the currents like bamboo in a breeze, and gardens of bioluminescent anemones pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, pink, gold, and seafoam green. Beside a well shaded by a flowering katsura tree, Hohodemi met the sea god's daughter, the princess Toyotama Hime. Her beauty was not like the fleeting cherry blossom. It was deep and eternal, like the movement of the tides. When they looked upon one another, the luck of the mountain and the luck of the sea became one. Hohodemi was welcomed into the palace as a guest of honor. For 3 years he lived in the weightless halls of the deep. Imagine the life there, a life without the harshness of the sun or the biting wind. The food was the essence of the ocean, and the music was the low, resonant hum of the earth's heartbeat echoing through the water. He forgot the mountains, he forgot the bow, and he forgot the anger of his brother. He lived in a state of ma, the perfect space between breaths. But one evening, as he looked up at the shimmering surface far above, a memory of the land returned to him. He sighed a deep, heavy sigh. Hohodemi found him and asked why his heart had grown heavy. When he told her of the lost hook, she went to her father, the great god of the sea. Watatsumi summoned all the creatures of the deep. Thousands of fish, from the smallest silver minnow to the great leviathans, gathered in the palace courtyard. "Has any among you seen the hook of the sea luck?" the great god roared. A red sea bream stepped forward, its throat swollen and red. "I have had a sharp pain in my throat for 3 years," it complained. The sea god reached into the fish's mouth and pulled out the lost hook, cleaned of its salt and grime by the gentle movements of the water. "Now you must return," said Watatsumi, "but take with you these 2 jewels, the tide-flowing jewel and the tide-ebbing jewel. If your brother attacks you, hold up the flowing jewel, and the sea will rise to overwhelm him. If he begs for mercy, hold up the ebbing jewel, and the waters will recede. Hohodemi mounted the back of a great sea crocodile, which carried him through the indigo depths back to the world of light. As he stepped onto the beach of his home, he felt the warmth of the sun and the weight of the air once more. He returned the hook to his brother, but Hoderi's heart had grown hard and bitter during the years of waiting. He attacked Hohodemi with a spear. Hohodemi held up the tide-flowing jewel. Imagine the sound of the ocean rising, a massive, rhythmic roar as the water rushed over the dunes. Hoderi struggled in the rising tide, his feet losing their grip on the earth. Just as he was about to be swept away, he cried out for forgiveness. Hohodemi held up the ebbing jewel, and the water vanished as quickly as it had come, leaving the sand damp and the air still. Hoderi knelt in the wet silt and pledged his eternal loyalty to his younger brother. As you lie in your bed, imagine you are back in that bamboo basket, drifting down to the sea god's palace. The worries of the land, the hooks we lose, and the arrows we break cannot follow you here. Feel the tide-ebbing jewel in your hand. As you breathe out, imagine the tide of your thoughts receding. All the noise, the clutter, and the tension of the day is being pulled away by a vast, silent current, leaving behind only the smooth, clean sand of your mind. Feel the tide-flowing jewel as you breathe in. It does not bring a storm, but a soft, cool flood of relaxation. It fills your legs, your arms, and your chest with the weightless peace of the deep ocean. The katsura tree is swaying above the coral well. The princess of the sea is singing a song that has no words, only the sound of the deep. You are a guest in the silent halls of the water. The surface of the world is far away, a flickering memory of light. Down here, there is only the rhythm of the deep and the steady pulse of the anemones. Let the indigo light wrap around you like a heavy, silken quilt. The sea has claimed its luck, and the mountain is at rest. Sleep now, for the tides are in balance, and the palace of the deep is your home for the night.
As you lie in the stillness of your room, let the weight of the water from the sea god's palace linger in your limbs. The world of the surface is beginning to return, but it is a world transformed by the treasures of the deep. Hohodemi, the hunter of the mountains, stood upon the shore of Japan, the salt drying on his skin, and the two tide jewels, the flowing and the ebbing, glowing softly in his hands like two fallen stars. But Hohodemi did not return to the land alone. The princess Toyotama Hime, daughter of the sea god, could not bear to be parted from him. She followed the currents to the edge of the world, her heart filled with a new and heavy life. As the moon waxed and waned over the great 8 islands, the time came for their child to be born, a child who would bridge the gap between the spirits of the ocean and the rulers of the land. Imagine a beach where the forest meets the foam. On this lonely stretch of sand, Hohodemi built a parturition house for his princess. He used the feathers of cormorants to thatch the roof, pinning them down with the stems of seagrass. But the rhythm of the tides is faster than the hands of man. Before he could finish the roof, before the last feather was tucked into place, Toyotama Hime felt the quickening. She turned to Hohodemi, her eyes reflecting the deep indigo of the midnight sea. "The time is here," she whispered, her voice a soft rustle like the tide over pebbles. "I must enter the house to give birth, but you must promise me one thing, my love.
While I am within, you must not look upon me, for in the moment of birth I must return to the form of my home, and no mortal eye can endure the sight of a sea spirit in her true shape." Hohodemi promised. He stepped back into the shadows of the pine trees, the scent of resin and salt mixing in the cool night air. Inside the hut, the silence was broken by a strange, rhythmic sound, a wet, heavy slithering, like a massive creature moving through the reeds. Hohodemi waited. The minutes stretched into hours. The moon climbed to the zenith of the sky, casting long silver shadows across the sand. The curiosity that had once driven Amaterasu to peek from her cave now gripped the heart of the mountain luck. He forgot his oath. He forgot the warnings of the deep. He crept to the wall of the hut and peered through a gap in the cormorant feather thatch. Inside, he did not see the beautiful princess with the flowing black hair. Instead, he saw a massive wani, a great sea crocodile, or perhaps a dragon of the deep, writhing upon the floor. Its scales shimmered with a pale, ghostly light, and its eyes were vast, lidless orbs of ancient gold. In that moment, the creature gave birth to a son. Terror seized Hohodemi, and he cried out. The wani turned its head, and in an instant the dragon form vanished, replaced by the weeping Princess Toyotama. The shame in her heart was greater than the sea itself. "I wished to leave a path open between the land and the ocean," she sobbed, her voice breaking the stillness of the dawn. "I wished for our children to walk freely between the waves and the woods, but you have looked upon my shame. You have broken the trust of the deep." Without another word, she took the infant, wrapped him in sea silk, and left him on the shore. She turned back to the waves, and as she stepped into the foam, the ocean rose up to meet her. She vanished into the foam, and as she went, she closed the Umisaka, the sea boundary. The path between the world of men and the palace of the sea god was sealed forever, leaving only the sound of the waves as a memory of what had been lost. Hohodemi stood alone on the beach, the crying of the infant mixing with the screams of the gulls. He named the child Ugaya Fukiaezu, the one born under the unfinished cormorant feather roof. As you settle deeper into your blankets, imagine that unfinished roof. Feel the cool breeze drifting through the gaps where the feathers were never placed. It is a gentle, rhythmic wind that carries the scent of the ocean but keeps the warmth of the earth. The child grew, nurtured by the spirit of the sea and the strength of the mountains. He married his own aunt, Tamayori Hime, the younger sister of the sea princess who had come from the deep to care for him. Together they gave birth to 4 sons. The youngest of these sons was a boy named Iware Biku. He was a child of destiny, a boy whose eyes held the fire of the sun and the calm of the tide. We know him today as Jinmu, the first emperor of Japan. But before he could wear the crown, Jinmu had to undertake a great journey. He lived in the southern land of Kyushu, but the center of the world lay to the east in the fertile plains of Yamato. One morning, as the sun rose over the Pacific Ocean, Jinmu gathered his brothers and his followers. "The world is in chaos, the local spirits are restless, and the land needs a center, a heart of order. We shall follow the sun." Imagine the beginning of this great migration. It was not a march of war, but a rhythmic movement of a people seeking a home. They traveled by ship along the coast of the inland sea. Dip, pull, dip, pull. The oars moved in perfect time with the breathing of the rowers. They saw the islands passing by like green whales in the mist. They stopped in quiet coves to rest, building small fires on the sand and listening to the stories of the elders. As they moved eastward, the challenges grew. They faced local chieftains who commanded the lightning and mountain spirits who took the form of giant bears to block their path. Jinmu's eldest brother was struck down in battle, and for a moment the fire of the expedition began to flicker. Jinmu sat by the fire one night, his heart heavy. He realized he had been trying to fight like a creature of the earth, facing the sun as he moved east. "We are the children of the sun goddess," he mused. "We should not fight against the light. We should let the light be at our backs." He turned his army around, circling the peninsula of Ki so they could approach the plains of Yamato with the rising sun behind them. But the mountains of Ki were a labyrinth of ancient cedar and impenetrable fog. The paths vanished beneath the roots of the trees, and the air grew thin and cold. The army was lost. It was then that Amaterasu, looking down from the high plane of heaven, sent a guide. Imagine the sound of massive wings beating against the mountain mist. Whir, whir, whir. From the golden clouds descended the Yatagarasu, the great three-legged crow. Its feathers were as black as the void between the stars, but its eyes glowed with a celestial intelligence. The crow landed on a jagged rock and looked at Jinmu. It did not speak, but it took flight, circling over the trees, leading the way through the impossible maze. As you lie there, follow the flight of the Yatagarasu in your mind. It is a steady flight, soaring over the deep green valleys and the silver threads of the rivers. You are following the crow, moving through the fog of your own thoughts. The path is clearing. The mountains are opening up to reveal the vast golden plains of Yamato. The grass is tall and swaying in the wind like a sea of emerald. Jinmu reached the heart of the land and established his palace at Kashihara. He stood upon the earth and planted his spear, and in that moment the islands found their center. The lineage of the sun goddess was firmly rooted in the soil of the earth. Feel the tide ebbing jewel once more. The journey is over. The struggle of the migration, the heat of the battles, and the fear of the mountains are all ebbing away. The water is pulling back from the shore of your mind, leaving behind a wide, peaceful horizon. Feel the tide flowing, Jewel. A new tide is coming in, the tide of the great peace. It is a slow, warm flood of contentment that fills your room. The corner and feather roof is finally finished over your head, protecting you from the night. The three-legged crow has returned to the heavens, its silhouette vanishing into the velvet dark. The emperor is at rest in his palace of cedar, and the sea princess is singing from the deep, her song.
As the moon begins to descend over the jagged spine of the Japanese archipelago, imagine the air turning thin and cold. We have left the warm, salt-scented shores of the sea god's palace and the unfinished cormorant feather hut. We are moving deep into the heart of the land, into the steep, mist-choked mountains of Kumano. Here, the cedars are so ancient that their roots have become the stairs of the gods, and the fog hangs like a heavy, silken curtain between the world of men and the world of the kami. In this high, silent wilderness, Iwarebiko, the man we will come to know as Jimmu, led his people. They were travelers between two worlds, weary from years of wandering.
Their sandals were frayed by the sharp volcanic stones, and their spirits were dampened by the relentless mountain rain. They had come from the south, seeking a place where the sun would rise directly before them, but they found themselves trapped in a labyrinth of shadows. The mountains of Kumano were not empty. They were guarded by the Yamagami, the mountain deities who took the forms of giant bears and shimmering serpents. As Jimmu's army struggled through a narrow pass, a great poisonous mist began to pour from the cracks in the rocks. It was the breath of a mountain spirit, a heavy, sickly sweet vapor that stole the strength from their limbs. One by one, the warriors stumbled. Even Jimmu, the descendant of the sun goddess, felt his eyes grow heavy and his sword become a weight he could no longer lift. He collapsed against a moss-covered stone, the world spinning into a gray, silent void. But the high plain of heaven does not forget its children. Amaterasu, looking down through a rift in the clouds, saw her grandson lying in the mud of the mortal world. She called upon the god of thunder, Takemikazu, to intervene. Instead of descending himself, the thunder god sent his divine sword, Futsu no Mitama. Imagine a flash of lightning that carries no sound. A shimmering blade of celestial steel fell from the heavens, piercing the earth right beside where Jimmu lay. The moment the divine metal touched the soil, the poisonous mist vanished. The air became sharp and clear, smelling of ozone and pine needles. Jimmu woke, his strength returning in a sudden, rhythmic surge, like the tide rushing back to a dry shore. But though the poison was gone, the path was still hidden. The mountains of Kumano shifted and changed. A trail that led east in the morning would lead into a sheer cliff by noon. The army was paralyzed by the scale of the wilderness. It was then that the sky darkened, not with a storm, but with the shadow of a great bird.
Chapter 9. The Bell of Maidera and the Dragon Princess. As the empire of Yamato grew, so too did the stories of the hidden world, the world of the Ryujin, the dragon kings who rule the waters of the earth. Imagine leaving the golden palace of the emperor and traveling north to where the land cradles a vast, shimmering mirror of water known as Lake Biwa. It is the largest lake in Japan, a sea within the land, so deep and so still that it seems to hold the sky within its heart. In the mountains overlooking the lake sits the ancient temple of Maidera. It is a place of weathered gray wood, moss-covered stone lanterns, and a silence so profound that you can hear the dew falling from the pine needles. At the center of the temple hangs a massive bronze bell, a masterpiece of metal and spirit. Its surface is dark with age, etched with sacred Sanskrit characters and swirling patterns of clouds. Legend says that this bell was not cast by the hands of men alone. It was a gift from the Dragon King of Lake Biwa to a brave warrior named Tawara Toda. Toda had saved the Dragon King's family from a monstrous centipede that lived on the slopes of Mount Mikami. In gratitude, the King of the Waters brought the warrior to his crystalline palace beneath the waves, a place very much like the one Hohodemi had visited centuries before. When Toda returned to the world of light, he brought with him the great bell, whose tolling was said to be the very voice of the lake. But the bell held a secret. It was not just a herald of the hours, it was a bridge of sound. Imagine a night when the moon is a silver sliver over the water of Biwa. A young monk at Maidera stands before the bell, the wooden beam, the shumoku, held back by a thick silk rope. He breathes in the cool, damp air of the mountain. He releases the rope. Bong. The sound is not a sharp strike, it is a deep, resonant hum that begins in the bronze and spreads through the air like a ripple in a pond. It vibrates in the chest of the monk, it shivers through the needles of the pine trees, it rolls down the mountain and sinks into the dark, still water of the lake. Deep beneath the surface, in a palace of coral and pearl, the dragon princess Otohime hears the note. To her, the bell is not a call to prayer, but a summons of the soul. She is a being of the water, her skin as pale as a moon shell, and her robes woven from the foam of the waves. She rises through the indigo depths, her movement as fluid and silent as a dream. She breaks the surface of the lake without a splash, standing upon the water as if it were a floor of polished glass. She follows the sound of the bell up the mountain path. As she walks, the forest changes. The bamboo groves lean toward her, their leaves whispering her name. The foxes and the tanuki watch from the shadows, their eyes glowing with a quiet reverence for the daughter of the Dragon King. She reaches the temple of Maidera and stands before the great bell. She reaches out a hand that smells of salt and fresh springs, and touches the cooling bronze. The metal is still vibrating from the last strike. The metal is warm, holding the friction of the sound. To the Dragon Princess, this vibration is the heartbeat of the land, a rhythmic pulse that connects her watery home to the iron and stone of the mountains. She stays there for hours, her forehead pressed against the bronze, listening to the fading echo. She is a bridge between the elements. In her presence, the fire that forged the bell, the earth that provided the copper, the wind that carries the sound, and the water of her own spirit all come into a perfect, silent balance. But as the first light of dawn touches the peak of Mount Mikami, the princess must return. She cannot stay in the world of the sun for long.
She turns back toward the lake, her footsteps leaving a trail of morning dew that will never dry. She sinks back into the depths of Biwa, carrying the resonance of the bell within her heart. They say that even today, if you stand on the shore of Lake Biwa when the air is perfectly still, you can hear a second echo. It is not the sound of the bell traveling through the air, but the sound of the bell traveling through the water, a deeper, slower, more rhythmic tone that comes from the Dragon King's palace. It is the sound of the deep responding to the high, the water responding to the mountain. As you settle into your blankets, imagine you are that great bronze bell. You are heavy, solid, and grounded. The wooden beam of the day has struck you, and now you are simply vibrating with the memory of the sound. Feel the resonance in your body. It is a slow, rhythmic hum that starts at your toes and moves up through your legs, your chest, and your arms. It is a warm, golden vibration that shakes loose all the tension of the day. Imagine the Dragon Princess standing beside you. She is the spirit of your rest. Her cool, soft hand is on your shoulder, stilling the vibration, turning the hum into a deep, silent peace. The lake of Biwa is within you now. It is a vast, dark, and perfectly still body of water. The ripples of your thoughts are moving further and further toward the shore, growing smaller and smaller, until the surface is a mirror of the stars. The temple of Maidera is quiet. The monk has gone to sleep. The bell hangs silent in the belfry, its bronze cooling in the night air. The Dragon King is at rest in his palace of pearl, and the princess is dreaming of the mountain. You are the space between the strikes of the bell. You are the silence that follows the sound. Let the indigo water of the lake wrap around you, weightless and cool. Sleep now, for the echo has found its home, and the dragon is guarding the deep.
As the final echoes of the bell of Maidera sink into the silver depths of Lake Biwa, imagine the world beginning to soften. We have traveled from the shimmering floating bridge of heaven through the dark caves of the sun, across the many-layered fences of Izumo, and into the hidden palaces of the deep. Now we return to the heart of the land, not to a palace of kings or a battlefield of giants, but to the simple, sacred rhythm of the Japanese countryside. This is the era of the Great Peace, the time when the kami, the myriad spirits of the world, settled into a quiet, enduring partnership with the people of the islands. Imagine a valley tucked between two gentle green-shouldered mountains. It is a place where time does not move in a straight line, but in a slow, revolving circle, like the water wheel of a mountain stream. The air here is thin and sweet, smelling of wood smoke, wet earth, and the faint citrus scent of the hinoki forests. In this valley, there is no separation between the holy and the everyday. The kami are everywhere. They are not distant, frightening gods. They are the presence in the wind that rustles the rice stalks. They are the warmth in the smooth river stones that have sat in the sun all afternoon. They are the sudden, crystalline silence that falls over a bamboo grove in the heat of midday. As you lie in your bed, imagine you're walking through this valley at the hour of twilight, the time of great mystery. The sky is a soft, bruised purple, and the first stars are beginning to blink like distant fireflies. Look toward the edge of the forest. There, nestled among the roots of a 1,000-year-old cedar, sits a small stone shrine, a hokora. It is weathered by centuries of rain, covered in a velvet-soft layer of emerald moss. A simple straw rope, a shimenawa, is tied around the tree, marking it as a place where the spirit of the woods resides.
There is no priest here, no grand ceremony, only a small ceramic bowl of fresh water and a single perfect branch of sakaki leaves left by a traveler. The spirit of the tree does not speak in words. It speaks in the rhythmic creak of its branches and the slow, deep movement of its roots as they drink from the mountain springs. This is the Golden Age, a time when humanity learned the secret of Chinju no Mori, the sacred groves that protect the villages. Follow the path down toward the village. The rice paddies are flooded with water, reflecting the violet sky like a series of fractured mirrors. In each paddy, the spirit of the grain is at rest. The hard work of the planting is over, and the harvest is a distant dream. For now, there is only the growth, the silent, invisible pulse of life moving through the stalks. Listen to the sound of the valley. It is a symphony of small, rhythmic things. The chime of the crickets in the tall grass, the distant, hollow thump of a shishi-odoshi, the bamboo water pipe as it fills, tips, and strikes a stone in a garden. Drip, drip, clack. This sound is designed to break the silence so that you may appreciate how deep the silence truly is. It is the heartbeat of the land, a reminder that the world is awake even when it is still. In the center of the village stands the great Torii Gate, the gateway to the unseen. Its vermilion pillars glow in the fading light, a bridge between the physical and the spiritual. As you pass through it in your mind, feel a shift in the weight of the air. The noise of the world, the worries of the past chapters, the battles of the emperors, the tricks of the fox spirits, all of it falls away. Inside the shrine grounds, the ground is covered in fine white gravel that crunches rhythmically beneath your feet. Crunch, crunch. This is the sound of purification. Each step is a shedding of a burden. You reach the wooden trough where the water flows from a dragon-shaped spout. You take the long-handled ladle and pour the cool water over your hands. Feel the purification in your spirit. The water is not just washing your skin, it is washing the friction from your thoughts. Like Izanagi at the river, you are rinsing away the shadows of the underworld. The water is carrying away the kegare, the stagnation and the heaviness of the day, leaving you as clear and bright as the sun goddess herself. Now imagine the great peace extending over the entire archipelago. From the snow-capped peaks of Hokkaido to the coral reefs of Okinawa, the land is breathing in unison. The millions of kami, the spirits of the waterfalls, the spirits of the kitchen fires, the spirits of the needles and the looms are all settling in for the night. The sun goddess, Amaterasu, has finished her weaving. She has folded the golden fabric of the day and placed it in a cedar chest. She looks down one last time, her gaze a warm, protective amber, before she retires to her own heavenly hall. The moon god, Tsukuyomi, takes his place, his silver light acting as a cool balm for the earth. In this golden age, there is no need for high walls or sharp swords. The people sleep in houses of wood and paper, the sliding shoji doors blurring the line between the indoors and the starlit garden. The ancestors are near, their presence a soft, comforting warmth, like the embers of a dying fire. As you settle into the final depths of your rest, imagine you are the entire land of Japan. Your legs are the deep roots of the southern islands, anchored in the warm blue currents of the sea. Your spine is the rugged snow-crowned mountain range, strong and immovable. Your breath is the evening mist that rolls off the Pacific, cooling the forests and quieting the cities. Feel the great peace in your heart. It is a state of wa, harmony. Everything is in its proper place.
The serpent is in the earth, the dragon is in the lake, and the sun is in the heavens. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to win, and nothing left to fear. The three-legged crow has tucked its head beneath its wing. The white harrot is asleep in the tall grass of Inaba. The great bronze bell of Miidera has fallen silent, its metal cold and its spirit at rest. The islands are floating in the velvet dark, cradled by the Pacific, drifting on that same primordial mist from which they were born. The history of the gods is now your history. Their strength is your stillness. Their light is your dream. The Torii gate of your mind is open, and on the other side is a meadow of eternal moonlit peace. Let the rhythm of the bamboo water pipe carry you away. Drip, drip, clack. The sound is growing fainter, merging with the rhythm of your own heart. The valley is dark, the spirits are watchful, and the great silence of the islands is wrapping around you like a heavy silken futon. You are home. You are pure. You are at peace. Sleep now in the golden age. Sleep, for the kami are guarding your breath, and the morning is 1,000 years away.